Revolution Radio proudly presents, live from the heart of the Blue Ridge, Roanoke, Virginia. It's the Just Bernard Show with host Bernard Alvarez. Join Bernard as he shares topics that reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience, including world liberty, the esoteric, suppressed technologies, spiritual ascension, and human consciousness. Humanity has awakened, and our time has come to realize our full potential. And now, live from the Star City, your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Anyway, so without further ado, let me tell you a little bit about our guest. In case you don't remember, Asher Davidson is the co-founder of the Center for Visionary Leadership in California. He is the author of The Transfiguration of Our World. He's the co-author of The Practical Visionaries, Spiritual Politics, and Builders of the Dawn. He is a co-founder of Sirius, an ecological village and spiritual community in Massachusetts, and founding director of the Social Investment Forum. Welcome back to the show, Gordon. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Well, thank you, Bernard. It's a joy to be back with you. We had such a great time last time, and I'm sure we'll explore lots of exciting topics again.
Yes, absolutely. And I must tell you, we had so much positive feedback from your last visit to our show that I reached out again to Eileen and said, let's bring him back. She's like, yes, bring him back.
Wonderful.
So we're very happy you're here. And just to remind everybody a little bit about what we talked about last time. Well, we covered quite a bit of material last time, but I feel I'd like to start off talking today a bit kind of where we left off, because if I remember correctly, we left off talking about the positive things that are actually happening, and people don't realize how much positive is going on when we're seeing so many dark scenarios. And I was hoping that perhaps you could share with us some of those dark scenarios that people keep floating around there. I mean, I've seen everything from, we're going to have Project Bloombeam is going to do a fake alien attack and put everybody into FEMA camps, and all of these horrible radiation is going to kill us. Fukushima is going to kill us. What is it now? The next one is the asteroid that's headed toward the planet. It's going to kill us in about 3 weeks now, according to some. So there's plenty of it out there. But share with us a little bit of what you were talking about and what you've been bombarded with.
Well, I think the fundamental thing that I think is most reassuring to people is to realize that we simply are not alone in this process we're going through right now on our planet. We are at a culminating crisis of the breakdown of the control systems of the cabal that have been in place for millennia on this planet. The leadership of the cabal, who were the extraterrestrials from outside the planet, have been completely removed or turned to the light. There are no more negative alien presences on Earth, period. That's for sure. There has been a decision made at the level of the Solar Council, because our Earth is a chakra in the body of the solar system, and because it was so darkened and in sort of a slave condition almost by the activities of the dark side, that the Solar Council decided that it was time in 2002 to remove the leadership of the dark side from the planet, and that has been accomplished. It's done. That started in 2002 and went on all the way through 2012, and they are gone completely. And what we have left are all the humans who cooperated with them and benefited from the systems that they put in place. That is now being steadily dismantled, and meanwhile, there is a huge effort being done to create a new system and a new plan for how this world can be organized. that's being done because the galactics have been given permission by the Solar Council to begin to increase the radiation of love and light to this planet, which that started in 2002, and it's been increasing ever since, as most of us can recognize through our own experience. And they are also protecting the Earth from any of the further false flag events that are of major consequence, like 9/11. Like nuclear, there will be no nuclear war on this planet, no nuclear exchange whatsoever. That has definitely been ruled out. The galactics are neutralizing the radiation from Fukushima. Otherwise, we would be sitting now with the Pacific, a giant nuclear sink.
Yeah.
And it just isn't happening. In fact, there's a researcher named James Klinghoffer, who is a well-known fish researcher, and he has shown that the radiation in the Pacific has dropped off dramatically over the last few months, and he has no explanation for it. Because there was a lot of stuff going on with the fish, but all of a sudden it stopped. And he's totally puzzled why this happened. And there it is. It's happened. And the chemtrails that so many people have been concerned about, I don't know how it is in your area, but they're gradually disappearing. There's fewer.
Yeah.
Is that true for you too?
Yes, I've noticed. I haven't seen many this last year.
No, they're fewer and fewer because what's happening is because the cabal is under such financial pressure from all the activities that are going on to move the control of the financial system out of their hands and into the hands of the Light Alliance, that they're pressed for money, and because of that, they don't have the money to finance all this stuff going on in the sky, and that's really running out. And plus, the galactics were neutralizing them anyway, so they really weren't having any effect. The only real possible value to them was to frighten people by, as now many people knew that these were a result of the cabal's activities. It was like showing they still have power by doing this. Well, they're now disappearing because they don't have much power left, and that's really happening. So there's so many positive signs going on about this. Okay, let's look at the Pope. He is one of the key leaders of the Light Alliance. He is setting the tone and laying out the vision of where we are going to go as a world, as a society, in terms of reforming the banking system, reforming and forgiving debt, which he's talking about now, and they're talking about a Jubilee year coming out this fall, where which has traditionally been a forgiveness of all debt. Not only debt, but forgiveness of all crimes and sins against us. He also called it a year of mercy, starting in December, which is very interesting because as the understanding of what the cabal has actually done on this planet over the millennia is revealed fully, it's going to be a tremendous spiritual test for the humanity, because it's going to be, how are we going to respond to that? Are we going to seek revenge? Are we going to be, angry and do horrible things? Or are we going to move into a state where we say, okay, they did this because they were dark, they were negative, they were confused, and now it's time for forgiveness, and they are being removed, and they will never again be able to do this on our planet. And that will be a great spiritual moment if we as humanity can forgive for all of what has happened on this world.
Right, and let me just jump in and say something about the new Pope, because I can't help but notice that, and I don't mean to sound dark, but I can't believe he hasn't. There hasn't been an attempt on his life yet with everything that he's coming out and saying, and I mean, I'm surprised that the church isn't burning in hellfire according to their own story. The way that he's become so progressive. But on the other hand, there is this. Everyone's very concerned that he won't come out. No pun intended for gay rights, but I think it's a matter of step by step, one thing at a time. I don't think that I think he might lose his standing with the Catholics if he came out right away.
Yeah,
even though I do believe he will eventually.
Yeah. He is definitely taking steps on that issue. I mean, he said it. Who am I to judge?
Yes, exactly.
And I think that's, for the Catholic Pope to say that, is an extraordinary step in consciousness for the Catholic community, for the Catholic Church. It's unbelievable. And all the reforms that he's done within the Vatican Bank, which was one of the key focal points for the control system of the financial world by the cabal, that has been completely reformed now. He's changed it into professional leadership. He fired all the directors that were in there. I mean, he's done that very clearly. And now the encyclical on the environment, which is quite fantastic, not because it's not only about the environment, it's about the equality and our commitment to help all human beings have a decent life. That he's put that right in there with the whole thing about the environment, and that is a very profound statement. It is actually a complete. What I got is it's the most complete statement yet on a broad worldwide scale of the plan that the Light Alliance is fully engaged in implementing at this time. It is a complete overview, taking care of the poor, stop the worship of money, that allowing capitalism to run rampant and do whatever it wants in the world, to change the way that money is distributed, all this stuff. And it's just the beginning. It's just the opening wedge. But he's laying out the vision of where we need to go. And it's going to, as we proceed, it's going to become more and more detailed about how the banks are going to be reformed. And of course now, with what's going on with the Greek banking system, it's very likely that they're going to step out of the euro and default on their loans, which has a gigantic impact, which no one is talking about in any news story, which is very interesting. The Deutsche Bank of Germany has $50 trillion worth of derivatives, which are sort of paper assets that are based on the loans that they made to Greece.
Yeah.
If Greece defaults on those loans, those $50 trillion are listed as assets on the books of the Deutsche Bank and many other banks. If they go out, all those assets disappear, so that they become very unstable in terms of their viability, in terms of their balance sheet. This is a significant, huge situation, which could be the trigger for the actual reform. Ultimately, I think it will be ultimately the full reform of the banking system, where we eliminate interest-based money, eliminate interest-based debt, where we recharter banks based as public utilities rather than profit-making corporations, and they serve the public's need for banking and for, allowing economic activity, but not extracting these gigantic sums of money from the interest on everything.
Yes, absolutely. And it's funny, I remember, back when Occupy started, what was that, 2010 or 2011, everyone was focusing on moving money out of these big banks and into credit unions.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was a credit union person now for, 10 years now, but I find that this has become a very big a thing. Big businesses are moving their money out of Bank of America and moving it into a local credit union. And for those of you that don't understand how a credit union works, you have a share in it. You have a say. You can vote during board meetings. You get to choose how the money gets redistributed into your community, whereas a bank won't do that. Wells Fargo is a great example of that. They're being called out on funding these detention centers for Latino families and the horrible things that go on in these detention centers. That's being funded by Wells Fargo, and now people are starting to realize that, and they're divesting from these types of things.
Absolutely.
But on a greater scale, let me ask you this question, if you can answer it. If Greece pulls out of the euro, what would that mean for Europe?
Well, it's going to cause a lot of chaos in the banking sector. And it depends a lot on how they try to manage the crisis that will result. Because, it's not just a political crisis about the European Union. It's much more fundamental. It's a financial crisis that they're not talking about one iota. There's not a word in the press about this, about all the derivatives that are held by these banks based on loans that were made to Greece. So if they default, all those paper assets become worthless. That becomes a huge issue in terms of the valuation of these banks and the valuation of their stock and everything else, whether they can actually meet their financial obligations, on and on. And it very likely will trigger a period of real chaos. Now, that's not to say that the United States isn't going to be affected either, because the United States has $90 trillion worth of derivatives in its banking system. And, the ripple effects of what happens in Greece can, of course, affect us, too.
Of course.
And I'm sure some of the loans are based on what happens in are loans made to Greece, although not to the extent that it's happened in Europe. So, there are a lot of things that are really, it will certainly create a lot of instability in the whole financial world, which is what business hates. Instability.
Yes,
that's what the whole business world, and that's why the stock market's dropping now, because the effects are unpredictable, and that's what business doesn't like. Not knowing what's going to happen, because so many of the investments and plans are very long term in terms of developing products and projects and all kinds of things. And if you don't know where things are going to be in a certain period of time, it's very, very challenging to feel confident enough to invest money or do things, and plus your plans can get disrupted, which happens often. So it's going to be a period of some degree of instability. I mean, I don't think we're going to have a total crash of the economic system or anything like that. That's not going to happen. The cabal does not want that, and the Light Alliance does not want that.
Right.
And I think what it's going to do is create a incentive momentum towards really reforming the banking system, as I've described. I think
that's good.
And I don't think it will really push us in that direction.
Now, Gordon, with everything that we're seeing on the positive note, of course, the cabal is going to do everything they can to grab every last crumb they can, while they have some power. And to the degree that, a great example is I guess I'll call it the cognitive dissonance of this last week in the United States. Here we had a landmark civil rights. We've made it to where marriage equality for everybody is now the law of the land in the United States. But at the same time, we have this Trans-Pacific Partnership that's threatening to take away the sovereignty of either state and or national code of ethics when it deals with production.
Mm-hmm.
So, is it fair to say that this is just like their last little attempt to kind of grab control?
Yes, it is. It's something, of course, that's been in the works for almost a decade.
Yeah.
But it's something that they are basically trying to give as much power as possible to corporations to rule. And I don't see it as a real threat, because I don't think it's ever going to even come close to being implemented, even if it's passed, because the situation now is really rapidly moving and unfolding, and the revelations that are coming out about the control systems, about all the corruption everywhere, it's a necessary process so that people really understand how hopelessly dysfunctional and corrupt the financial system is, and the political system for the most part, and therefore will be ready for a whole new way of organizing. That when something comes forward, it's presented in a really clear way with a lot of integrity and a lot of information about exactly where it's coming from, what it's for, and what it will do, and the benefits it will bring to people. That I think people, because of now being so aware, even very ordinary people are aware of how messed up the system is, they will be much, much more open to accepting a whole reform and welcome it. And that's part of what has had to happen, to set up the conditions so that it would be acceptable to really reform it. And I see that as part of a higher cosmic flow in planning of how things unfolded. So I'm not that concerned about the TPP, because, although it's an odious piece of garbage, it is not, I don't think, ever going to have any real impact on the world.
Well, that's good to hear, and I feel I have to agree with what you're saying, that not only this particular piece of garbage trade agreement, but all of the other corruption that's been coming out over the last several years is a part of this awakening for the masses, and I feel that as a matter of fact, it's one of the things that I believe is a part of the process is that we have to know what we don't want, and by allowing this to come forward into the public, we can say, "Oh, this has been going on all this time, and I didn't know about it. Well, now I know. I don't want that. I don't want that as a part of my life anymore."
Exactly. And often there's not very much of a clear presentation of what people would want, or a vision of what people could be better, because most people don't feel that they have the power or the capacity to change it, because it seems so overwhelming and all pervasive. The power that's present. But what part of my work is to really help people understand our consciousness is creating what we experience. And therefore, as we become more and more aware that we don't want this, okay, what do we want? We want a world where people have enough for all their basic needs met, everybody on the planet, where we don't have to worry about survival and constant subconscious survival fear, influencing everyone and causing even wealthy people to feel insecure. And all that has to change. And that's part of the plan, is that the wealth that's been accumulated illicitly through manipulation of the financial system, all the levels of corruption and stuff that's gone on, all that's going to be revealed and taken and shared with the world. And there's no way that in one single anything can be hidden from the galactics, because I always think this is amusing, because I know that the cabal has these caves up in the mountains all over the world in secret locations where they've got huge caches of gold and barrels of diamonds and all this unbelievable stuff, and they think that's going to make them safe. Well, the reality is the galactics have technologies that can detect down to the last penny any substance or anything that they wish to discover anywhere on the planet, at any depth, anywhere, in any cave or anything else. So all that's going to be brought to light, and there's no way that it's going to protect these people. And that all will be taken, all that's illegal and illicit, and will be shared.
That's a great message, and a wonderful way for us to start preparing our own consciousness to moving forward. But as far as the dark, I'll call them the dark lighters, for lack of a better term, the dark cabal. What is there? Were you presented with a reason why they were given so much power for so long? And I understand why the power is being taken away, but why did they have to be here in the first place? Is this a part of our evolution?
Well, that's a very profound, deep question. And if we go back in history, way, way, way back, and this is for those who have an esoteric understanding, pre-Lemurian civilization, pre-Atlantean, pre-Lemurian, they came into this planet. This was a group of 50 aliens from another system, very predatory. And they basically, there was protection around the Earth, but there was like a time-space anomaly, like a wormhole, and they were able to enter into the planet. And they were here, and not very long after they got in here, they were discovered by the protectors, by the light guardians of the planet. And then there was this tremendous discussion that went on at the very highest levels, all the way into the Solar Council and even beyond, about whether they should be removed, which they could have been, or allowed to stay here and become part of our evolutionary process. And it was decided after much debate that they would be allowed to stay, because by being here, they would be presenting humanity throughout our evolution with the choice between the dark side of greed and selfishness and self-interest, or going the path of light and choosing to work for the good of all and with love. And the masters were given the opportunity, and have been throughout the centuries, to offer the spiritual teachings of the path of light and love, and offer that to humanity, and humanity then has to choose between, well, I'm going to go this path of selfishness, the path of light, or how much am I going to go towards light and how much towards dark. And we get to learn from the choices we make and the karma of those choices. We get to learn which is the better way. And in the long term, that guarantees that we will ultimately choose the path of light because it's in our own best interest. As we have learned from our karmic experiences, when you do things that are greedy and selfish and horrible, there are bad consequences. When you do things that are loving and kind and help other people, you feel really good about yourself and about what you're doing and everything else. And so over time, more and more people have deeply internalized an understanding of why the path of light and love is better for yourself, for your family, for everyone, than to go the path of darkness. Now, there's still a lot of people who haven't learned that, that's for sure, and they are, but their time to use the earth as their learning laboratory is coming to an end. And the requirements for being able to remain on earth are being raised, and you will have to be able to embody a certain degree of love before you will going to be allowed to remain on this planet.
All right. Thank you, Gordon. We have to take a short commercial break. We'll be right back and continue our talk with Gordon Asher Davidson.
And now, back to your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Welcome back to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We are speaking with Gordon Asher Davidson. He is the author of The Transfiguration of Our World. You can find out more about Gordon at worldtransfiguration.com. And with that, Gordon, welcome back to the show. And I have a very interesting question because I find that as we are becoming more and more aware, more and more informed with this type of information that we're sharing on today's show, the waters get murky for some people. People get confused. People begin to look for saviors. People begin to fall for false light. And I mean, a great example, when was it, about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when the Olympics were, there were, people that were channeling the Galactic Federation, and the Galactic Federation said that they were going to land the mothership in the middle of the stadium, and they were going to meet with all the leaders of the world. And of course, none of that came to pass. And I'm wondering how, in all of this information that can get very confusing and murky, how can we as individuals who want to learn more, who want to become more aligned with the True Light Alliance, what type of discernment is needed? How do we develop our intuition perhaps to know the false light from the real light? What are your thoughts on that?
Yes. Okay, good. This is a very, very important point that you're raising. And let's just look at what are the sources of different information. I think that's an important discernment to have. I mean, there's, of course, one of the tricks of the cabal is, you probably know, I'm sure you know, is to disseminate a lot of disinformation. That's information saying, all kinds of things to confuse people, frighten them, and one of their goals always is to make the cabal seem more powerful and controlling than it actually is, especially now. They're desperately trying to reinforce the sense of their power and their influence and control, and that's just not true very much anymore. They still have influence, but it's nothing like it was. And so there's a lot of disinformation being put out. There are all kinds of people posing as, quote, insiders who are telling all kinds of, some of them very reputable spokespeople for this whole new paradigm, that all kinds of things are going on, like intergalactic war is now raging in our region of our solar system, and there's all kinds of different entities entering or about to enter. That all kinds of there are a lot of things going on, but none of them are harmful or dangerous to us. We are totally protected. There is a massive armada of ships from all over the galaxy or around our planet at this point, both to observe what is happening with our evolution, because it's a very unusual process where we are going to go through a raising of consciousness, an ascension, if you will, while remaining in our bodies. And that is extremely unusual. So they're here to observe that process, and they're also here to protect and to assist. And that's all here. So there is no danger that we're going to have some meteor come in or something like that. But all this generates fear, and the dark forces live on fear. They actually live off the energy of fear and confusion and suffering. They do.
Yeah.
So they want to promote that and create that as much as possible, and it's important for us to understand that. So that's the first thing, that you can get information in that way. Now, a lot of people are getting information and they're quote, channeling it. And they're contacting all kinds of different beings, whether it's masters or extraterrestrials or angels and all kinds of things. One of the things that's not really very well understood is you can receive information from what's called the astral plane, or the plane of where it's the desire plane. So you will receive and get what you want to receive. Whatever is present in your field as your resonance is exactly what you will resonate with and draw in as your channeling or your information. So if you're obsessed with a fear that we're going to have some horrible catastrophe happen to our planet, well, if we remove the threat of earthquakes, then it's going to be an asteroid or it's going to be war,
right.
Galactic war. Because people who have that fear frequency deeply embedded in them, they may not even be fully aware of it, it's in their subconscious, then they will create scenarios based on that frequency, because frequency is everything. And if you resonate with that frequency, you will pull that frequency in and formulate a vision that will match the frequency you're holding. That is exactly what happens. And so there's many, many people bringing through all kinds of ideas. And then there are also situations where people, want to get contact with a master or an angel, and so they will get information it's nice. It might be very helpful and loving and kind, but nothing new. It's just things you've heard many, many times before.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not particularly harmful. It's just not particularly revelatory. and then you will get people who are able, through a lot of discipline, a lot of inner process, able to actually contact beings at higher level frequencies. In order to do this, you have to be at a higher level frequency yourself, right?
Yeah.
And you have to have a spiritual history of showing that you're going to use what you receive at these higher levels for the good of humanity and really put it to use. The whole secret of higher guidance is use it or lose it. If you don't put it to work and use what you receive, you're not going to get any more. It's that simple. And so you have to be very willing to work and use what you get in helping humanity understand things and work in a good way with that. And there are millions of traps along the way with that, where you can get deluded, where your ego gets inflated, or you think you've got all the answers, or you want to start telling everybody what they should be doing and everybody else is wrong, and on and on and on. There's a million ego traps on this. So you have to have had some kind of spiritual process, training, a path that you've been on, where you've learned about all these ways that you can get sucked into these subconscious patterns, and really have done some significant work on clearing your subconscious of the need to be seen as a spiritual teacher, or need to be right, or the need to be better than other people, or whatever it is, all the different needs that get met through being a channeler, for instance. And so it's a very subtle and complex process, and there's a lot to it. But these are some of the criteria. Now, how do you, as an individual, work with this? Well, what I like to say to people is, when you listen to someone, or you read a channeling, or you read a book, or you watch a TV show, or anything else, you tune in. It's like you have to pay attention to your own being, and you have to sense, as you're experiencing what you're getting from this source, whatever it is, how is it affecting you? What's being stimulated in you? Are you feeling uplifted? Are you feeling inspired? Are you feeling empowered? Are you feeling, wow, this is good, I can do something, there's work I can do, and there's things I want to do, and it makes me feel good about the future and all that? Or are you being hit with a frequency of fear, of all the horrible things that can happen, a very negative, pessimistic view of the future, increasing your distrust of other human beings so that you feel suspicious and not open, it closes you down? It's like really watching how what you receive affects you. And I like to say to people, you need to be as careful with your media diet as you are with your food diet.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
It's so important. People don't understand how they're being manipulated and brainwashed, and they're just attuning themselves to these very negative frequencies as you watch the news, supposedly news. Well, it's really, here's the latest horrifying disaster with
Right.
blood and horrors that we can scare you with, that will make you afraid of other humans, that will make you feel hopeless, and the world's falling to pieces, and it's all disaster, and you might as well just give up and die, or just be paranoid, or just crawl into your shell and let us run the world. That's kind of the goal.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to go there. You don't want to give energy to that, because one of the most important things of all is we have creative power. It's one of our spiritual gifts as a spiritual being, is we create our experience through what we think, what we feel, what we expect, what our whole vibrational frequency is holding. That becomes our experience in life. And so as we begin to really understand this power that we have the capacity to create the future the way we would like it to be, rather than what we don't want. And what the cabal is trying to do is get you to focus on this vision of this horrible, dark future is inevitable, and that's where we're going. And the more people believe in it, the more likely it is to happen. But what we're doing, the Light Alliance is doing, is saying that's not at all real. The real future is we're going to become free, joyful, enlightened, and everyone's going to have everything they need, and the fear and the insecurity is going to disappear from this planet. That is our goal, and that is where we're working towards, and more people are holding now that vision of the future, which means that makes it all the more likely it's actually going to come into being.
Yes, absolutely. And I really do feel it is about like you said, our frequency and learning the self-discipline of understanding how frequency works within ourselves. It's funny when you said about when you receive the information, that's very similar to what I tell people who ask me or take my classes or courses, that you have to listen to your body. Is it expansive? Do you feel expansive, or is it restricting? Or you can tell by the way your central nervous system reacts. Is it making you clench your shoulders and close your chest, or is it making you spread out? Is it making you lift your head for more?
Exactly.
And that's a very, 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 very good example. I'm so glad you brought up this ascension within the body. There is so much confusion on ascension. I know we've only got about 10, 15 more minutes, and we probably can't get through the whole thing, but so many people are getting confused on this idea of ascension. We have the old, I don't know if I want to call it the evangelical version of, people flying up to heaven. We've got the ET version where we're all going to be taken up on a mothership. And then we have the one that actually I agree with, and the one that you just mentioned, that we are going through an in-body transformation / ascension in order to, for me, it's about facilitating more light within our body and maintaining that higher frequency and making everything available, or because of that, everything becomes available through our intention process, for lack of a better term. But could you perhaps explain a little more? What is this ascension within the body?
Right. This is very, very important, and I'm glad you brought it up. Well, what's happening from a whole larger perspective to begin with is that there's the increase in the amount of light and higher frequency energy that's being radiated to the planet is just continuing to rise every single day. The energies are getting more and more potent, more and more clear, more light coming in, more love coming in, more spiritual power to do the work that's aligned with the higher is present for all of us, around us, within us. It's just pouring into the planet, right? And I think we all can experience that if we're at all sensitive to this. That is part of the ascension process. It's a stimulus for us to when we receive that energy, we will get a certain stimulation, and it will move us towards wanting to be more lighted, more clear, more loving. And at the same time, it will also stimulate everything in us that's not that. And it will bring up all kinds of shadow elements or things you think you've already purified or dealt with. They may rise up again, and you'll see them show up. And you have to refine them at an even more subtle level in your being. You're transforming and transfiguring those energies in your being at an even more subtle level than you did before. That works very well, and you gradually are able to absorb. The more we clear and purify, the more we can absorb of these higher energies. What then starts to happen is you become, your whole energy system starts to rise in frequency. Things that you used to resonate with, you no longer have resonance with. People you used to be engaged with, you find you can't be with them anymore because the frequencies don't match with yours. Food you used to eat, things you used to do, programs and things you used to read or listen to, no longer can accept because you feel your energy moving in a wholly different way. In order for this to really be facilitated, it's very important to meditate every day, to allow those energies to come and just have quiet, where you're not thinking about anything. You're just letting those energies flow in, and you can feel them going deep into your heart, and you can sense that energy flowing in. And to have enough quiet time in your life that shifting of energies, which is a very subtle process, to actually take place. But what that's doing is it's moving you into this higher frequency level where you'll begin to have new perceptions. You'll see things more clearly. You won't get as confused by the incredible level of noise there is out there in the world about everything. You know, there's always a noise to information ratio on any communication or channel, right? You always want to go to the channels that have the least amount of noise and the most information.
Mm-hmm.
And so you begin to feel yourself moving and feeling better and better, more joyful. Life becomes a bit simpler. You don't get so caught up in all of the detailed and the complex thought processes you can get into about, how do I solve this problem and that problem and this and that, and what am I going to do about this and that. Simply allowing things to unfold step by step in your life doesn't mean you don't do things, but you start from that place of holding your highest intention for your life, which is to become a fully lighted being, to radiate love to the world, I would assume, and to fulfill your higher purpose as beautifully and clearly as you can. As you hold that, you begin to shift what your daily experience is. And what you're actually doing is you're moving up into higher and higher frequencies. On the physical level, it means you have more energy, your health gets better, you have fewer and fewer physical problems, you're emotionally, you feel good and balanced more and more of the time. It's not a complete overnight thing, but it gradually shifts. And the same with your thought. You realize, I don't want to think about that kind of stuff anymore. It's just boring. It pulls me down. I don't want to go there. I'm not going there.
Mm-hmm.
And you focus on what brings you joy and makes you feel really good. And that's all about the creation and what you can create, because we are creative beings and we're meant to create, and that's really what life is all about. It's not watching someone else's creations, it's doing your own creations. I mean, sure, it's fun to watch other people's creations a little bit, but if you don't have a solid base of your own creativity in your life in some form, then you're missing something, and it feels empty. It feels like, but when you're creating, there's this wonderful energy that pours through you, which is part of the ascension process. When we ascend, we create. That's inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
So there we are. We're moving into these higher levels, step by step, gradually. But and eventually, as we go through this huge shift, which I call, and I've been told is called the Day of Revelation, where there's a massive inflow of higher spiritual energy and love, we will shift in our consciousness into a whole new level of perception where we will recognize our oneness with each other. We will see the energy flowing between all human beings and with nature and in all kingdoms of life. and we will have this tremendous sense of love for everyone and a sense of oneness, and we will live in that state in the body.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll be able to go into higher dimensional levels of consciousness to varying degrees, depending on our effort to do so in the past, and access different levels. Yet we will still be always able to come back into the body and live our life, because the transfiguration of the world requires that there's a huge multi-millions of people on this planet who are going to be here to regenerate nature, rebuild all of our systems in a completely new way with new principles, and to care and help and build a new life for all the people on this planet. That means housing and healthcare and food and education and opportunities for every single human being on this planet. That is our birthright, and that is what we are going to have. And that will be part of the Ascension. So we don't want to all just fly off
No.
because nobody's going to be here to do the good stuff.
That's right.
And
to see the beautifulness of it. Exactly.
And so we will have heaven here on earth. That is the goal. Heaven will be reflected on the earth.
And that's exactly how I feel. Thank you for that. And while you were talking about building everything, I couldn't help but a thought popped into my head about this new, speaking of putting it to work, putting it on the material plane, that Bernie Sanders is introducing that new bill. What is it, like a $13 trillion rebuilding the infrastructure bill?
Right.
Hey, this person's really trying to do that,
Yeah, he has the vision. He's aligned. He's definitely connected to the higher plan. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And there are many, many people like him all over the world, and we're putting out the vision. It isn't being implemented much right now, but it's coming. It's definitely going to come. And so many millions of local projects all over the world, tens of millions, that are doing incredibly wonderful things in a very small scale, but they're there and they're scalable into much larger levels as we continue to move into this Ascension transfiguration process.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you brought that up, as well as the local stuff that's going on. I don't think people realize how many positive, whether it be local or regional type of programs that are happening. People are developing new ways of doing things, more compassion-based. Here locally, we just had a fundraiser for helping women transition out of prison and to help them get a life. And I'm like, they never used to do that with prisoners around here.
Right.
They just let them go work at Burger King for the rest of their life or something. But it's what a beautiful way to look at the world and say, let's help everybody. Let's,
Exactly.
And these programs are being created.
And so many of them in every field, everywhere you look, and you just have eyes to see them. And of course, the mainstream media doesn't give much attention to it because it's counter to the cabal's agenda. But if you go read Yes Magazine or Green America or other kinds of real innovative kind of things, you'll find it there.
Anyway, Gordon, I hate to say it, we have run out of time already. Thank you so much for today.
Go to my website, worldtransfiguration.com. I'm starting a new program called Galactic News, a monthly update on what's happening from a galactic perspective.
Oh, I look forward to that. We'll see everybody next week. We love you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Bernard.